Welcome to Real Judaism with Rabbi Klapper. Unfiltered wisdom for Jewish life.
Bezos Hashem, we're here back on Daf Yud Dalid. So we just started explaining last week that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man originally with two faces, one being with two halves, and then he splits. And he wanted the purpose was that it should be kenegdo. Ezer it always was. Other half of a person was always an Ezer, meaning when Adam Rishon was created and Chava was actually part of him, so she was an Ezer even in that capacity. The point was to be kenegdo, to be opposite. So that's what we're getting up to. Why was it dafka that way? And also the question that we ended off with last time was that a person naturally wants to feel independent. They don't want to feel like they're reliant on somebody else. So why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu dafka create it in a way that you have to be reliant on somebody else? Biur adover hu. Ein ha'adam yochol yotoiv im hu levado. It is not possible for a person to truly be good, tov, if he is alone. Right? That's what the pasuk means. That it's lo tov, liot levado, right? Not that it's not good. I mean, I have a better idea, but you actually cannot get to what good is if you're alone. Michoik hatoiv lehetiv. The Das Tvunas, I believe the Ramchal, uses this phrase that the rule of the one who is good is to give. Toiv and lehetiv are in Hebrew very similar words. Tov means good, lehetiv means to give good, to give to somebody else. Kechol sha'adam meitiv yoiser, nasehu yoiser toiv. Welcome. We just got started. Hashem. So we were just saying that the reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu created or specifically separated the Ezer to be kenegdo was because there has to be the opportunity to give. The only way that a person can truly be good is if he gives. That's what makes him good. Right? And this makes very good sense because HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself is this way. In the Perek Tehillim that's attributed to Avraham Avinu, the pasuk says that olam chesed yibaneh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world for chesed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give, so he created a world to give to. So Avraham Avinu recognized this. Avraham Avinu gave the midah of chesed to give others, certainly in spirituality, but also he was very makbid in serving his guests only the finest delicacies because he wanted to give, because he wanted to emulate his creator. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing us what is the ultimate good, because the definition of good is based on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he's saying you cannot be good unless you have somebody to give to, unless you have the ability to give. That's how a person, the more a person gives, he, the giver, will be better. He'll be closer to good. He'll be closer to be like the Ribono Shel Olam. Al-Kain Bora, that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, there should be man and woman, and he separated them so there should be two physical bodies, two different physical bodies, so they have the ability to give to each other. And therefore, they'll come to higher madregas of becoming good. That's just to make things a little bit more clear, right? The definition of good. How can we define the definition of good? So, to a certain degree, you might say that good is a relative term. It's a subjective term. What one person's good is not somebody else's good. And if that's true, so then there's no way truly to define it, in which case all of this doesn't make any sense at all, because what one person says is good, somebody else will say is bad, and therefore how do you decide that this is how you're becoming good? Elamai, no. The definition of what is good and what is bad, or what is righteous and what is evil, or all these types of things are based on the way that there's a higher being. It's not subjective. HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'kvoidu ba'atzmo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself is the one who makes these definitions. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself is the one who makes these definitions, so then we have to see how he defines it. And we already said last week, right? Ki lekach toiv na'asasi lachem toirasi al ta'azovu. It's a lekach toiv. Ein toiv ela Torah. The Mishnah, the Brisa, I guess, at the end of Pirkei Avos, there's no good except for the Torah. The Torah is the blueprint of the world. And the purpose of the Torah is to serve Hashem. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling you, this is what the good is. This is how you're going to serve me. Which means that the truest good is to connect to Hashem through His Torah. And we know a very significant part of that, and the Vilna Gaon says, really the whole purpose of a human beings being here on this world is to improve his midos. So we have to work on that our whole lives. And how should a person, what midos should it be like? He should be like Hashem. And that's why we know there's a mitzvah of halachta b'droch, of a person should be like Hashem. But it's much more grand than that. It's not just one mitzvah. But really, like the Gaon says, this is how it encompasses a person's whole life. So therefore, if a person really wants to be good, he has to be like Hashem. How are you being like Hashem? So that's what we're saying over here. Being like Hashem, emulating Hashem's midos, that is what good is. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was a giver, and that's why He created the whole world, so He could give to the whole world, so He could give goodness. And what's goodness? Goodness is everything that He gives to us. He wants to shower us with blessings so we can get closer to Him. The ultimate good is being close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And He's showing us how does He do that Himself by giving. So if we are giving as well, that's how we're getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why it's good. So the more a person does that giving, the more he's good. And that's exactly how Hashem wanted the world to run. Just like He's giving good, He wants us also to give good. And therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man in that way, so that he would give. And then by giving, he'll become good as well. And by becoming good as well, he's going to fulfill the whole purpose of creation. And really, it's even deeper than that, but let's take this one step at a time. Continuing now. Lachein, tzorich liot ha'ezer mulo. That's why the helpmate, the one who is helping each and every individual, has to be opposite them. Kedei shiyativimo, in order that I should be able to give to them. If they're not opposite, they're part of me. I can't give to something that's part of me. I'm just going to add an interesting side point over here. Very interesting side point. We have a concept called v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. A person is supposed to love his neighbor as he loves himself. I have an interesting question. Is it really truly possible to love yourself? Is that possible? So the question is, it might sound like, of course you can love yourself. Well, explain to me how you love yourself. What actions are you showing that you love yourself? You're taking care of yourself. Okay. So, I mean, like, even animals take care of themselves.
Put yourself first.
Right? I put myself first. I always put myself ahead of everybody else. Some people might want to call that selfish, right? Self-centered, right? Which isn't necessarily the best definition. If you should love him like I love myself, so then I'm self-centered, so I love him. So, but then only one of us is going to be first, though. So which one should it be? It's very interesting. The Maharal, I believe in Nesiv Avas Hashem, in Nesivas Olam, says that it is technically impossible to love oneself. Why is it technically impossible to love oneself? The reason is because what the definition of love is. The definition of love is desire, a feeling of desire to connect to something. That's what love is. So you can't connect yourself. You are yourself. It's not a connection. There's no connection. You are yourself. And if you are yourself, what are you connecting to? Right? Okay. Nowadays we have this thing called connecting to yourself. You have to connect to your inner child, maybe. But lamaisa, it still doesn't fit into this definition. And that's why the Maharal says that there's no such thing. It can't. So what does it mean? V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. So in the most basic terms, the most basic way to be mekayim the mitzvah v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, based on the research that I put in, is exactly what the Gemara says about Hillel, who spoke to the man who said, I'll only be megayer if you teach me the whole Torah on one foot. And he says, what you don't like, don't do to your friends. And there, the Maharsha says it specifically, that's the Yesod of Ahavta Re'echa Kamocha, which basically is a very low level of Ahavta Re'echa Kamocha, means don't do be considerate of somebody else. If you don't want something done to you, don't do it to somebody else, which is a very passive way of being mekayim the mitzvah of Ahavta Re'echa Kamocha. And it is, according to, again, the research that I put in, the most basic way to be mekayim the mitzvah of Ahavta Re'echa Kamocha. There are definitely higher levels, but in terms of the actual kiyum, that's how you do it. Which means that v'ahavta over there just means to think about somebody else and be considerate to them. Don't act like fill in the blank, right? Be a mensch. Be considerate of somebody else, right? You wouldn't like it if somebody cut in front of you. Don't cut in front of somebody else. You wouldn't like it if somebody did this to you. Don't do it to somebody else. Now, that means the definition of love over there doesn't seem like it's connecting. It doesn't seem like it's connecting to that person. But that's why this most basic definition is that's not what the pasuk means. What the pasuk means is I care about myself. I'm going to make sure that I'm okay. I'm going to make sure that I have things that I need. So therefore, I'm going to do that for somebody else also. And on the lowest level is I don't want to get hurt. So I'm not going to hurt somebody else. So in the pasuk, the word ava would be more, again, from a halachic perspective, would be more better translated as care. Care about your friend like you care about yourself. That's it. Obviously, there's higher levels, which is maybe why the pasuk uses the word of ava, because there are higher levels. It's not just be considerate. Actually think, what can I do something nice for them? Because I'd want somebody to do that for me. But again, it's not a matter of connecting again. I don't have that feeling of desire to connect. So therefore, when we talk about that's what the term ava means. So when we're coming back to our topic over here, and we're talking about giving to somebody else, so we're actually talking about a form of Ahavta Re'echa Kamocha. We're talking about a way I want to give to that one. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu Dafka created a world where a person is supposed to get married and have somebody to give to in order to be mekayim the mitzvah of Ahavta Re'echa Kamocha. If you look, this is something we can go to much more deeply, but if you look in the Rambam, the way the Rambam describes the mitzvah of Ahavta Re'echa Kamocha in Hilchos Deus, and the way he describes the chiyuv that a husband has to his wife and a wife has to her husband in Hilchos Ishus are almost identical. They're almost identical, the way that he describes it, which is a little bit funny. We could ask questions about it. How could that be exactly? But what you do see is that certainly there's a kiyum of the mitzvah of Ahavta Re'echa Kamocha specifically with one spouse. For sure. That's the way it is. And it seems even that's the purpose. What Rav Chaim Friedlander is saying over here is that was the purpose of the creation in the first place. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu created it, and to be this way, to be opposite, in order so that you could give that good and be mekayim this idea of bringing more good into the world. So let's continue where we left off. It has to be specifically opposite you, so you can give to her, and by that way, you become closer. You become closer to each other. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's actually adding this line over here, because he didn't mention it before, becoming closer. So that you should become closer. Could be, maybe the whole point is just to give. No, there's another thing over here. There's another thing of becoming closer too. And this is what we discussed also. We mentioned last week, that was the purpose in the first place. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created them as one, because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants them to be, wants them to be one. So ultimately, even though we're separated, the whole purpose is to get closer. Mikan anu lamedim sha'abayis nivda al yosodos hachesed. From here we learn that creating a home is built on the foundations of chesed. V'zuhi ikar chovasam shel bnei hazug. And this is the main focus of a couple. Lishof lehitiv zeim zeh, to look for the good for the other one. Vim nishal harei Ramban oimer kishayu du partuvim gam hayu molidu mitrabim vim kein haise efshoros lehitiv zeim zeh. We're going to ask the question. The question that he asks is, wait a second. Even if they wouldn't have been separated, but and they had the ability to procreate, which was the whole point, which is what we discussed last week. So that means they still would be able to do that, even if they were one goof. That means they would have children. So they could give to those children. They would still have the opportunity to give. They still have the opportunity to give to somebody else. It just wouldn't be to a spouse. It would be to a child. So why, if the whole point was to be able to give to somebody else, you could have still been Mekayim it without splitting the body into two. You still could have done that. So why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu Dafka have to do it in this way? Kan anu megim lenekuda chashuva v'isodit b'yachas u'b'chiyuvim shebein ish li'ishto. So he's saying this is the point. This point we can see something very unique and special about the relationship that a husband and wife have to have with each other. Chiyuv achesed shebein adam lachaveru hu mitzvah o ma'ala gedola. The chiyuvim of chesed that people have with each other, with one Jew to another, is very important, right? Chesed is one of the 3 amudim that the whole world stands on. A person, we have to have chesed. It's an incredibly important thing, right? That's why you just quoted the pasuk, olam chesed yibaneh. Why does it say olam chesed yibaneh? So from there, Avram Avinu learned, Kadosh Baruch Hu created the world with chesed. But there's another inyan in there. Why? Because the Mishnah says that ashloisha amudim olam oimed, right? The 3 things that the world stands on: Torah, avodah, gemilas chasadim. So 1 second. If the whole world stands on Torah and avodah and gemilas chasadim, so then when the world was created in the first at least 20 generations, if not more than 20 generations, there was no Torah. There was no avodah. How could the world stand?
Good.
So that's what he's saying. Olam chesed yibaneh. The whole world is standing only on chesed. Only on chesed. Until there was a Kabbalah Torah, which was more than 20 generations after the creation of the world. And until there was a Mishkan, that we had real avodah, or maybe when the Ovos HaKadoshim, when they instituted Tefillah. So until then, there was no avodah either. So what was the world standing on? Chesed. The world was standing on chesed. So of course, chesed, the whole world is standing on chesed. It's obviously a very important ththing. Olam im adam imayit b'asiyas chesed. If a person doesn't do as much chesed, let's say, okay, he's lacking something. He's lacking something. He doesn't have this great mila of chesed. Aval eno pogea upoge bezulaso. If he's not giving to everybody, so he's lacking this great mila. But is he hurting somebody? That's what he said. The lowest level is just don't hurt anybody. Don't hurt anybody. Don't do chesed. Don't do me any favors. Just don't hurt me. Right? Be considerate not to do bumper cars with your car when you're trying to, you might not care about your own car, but what about me? What do you have to do? Right? Or any number of other things that what?
Give me your car.
This is why Hilchas Shchenim is such a difficult topic, because how careful are we with our neighbors? Right? But Lamaise, even if I'm not doing tremendous chesed, at least I'm not hurting anybody. There'll be other chesed doers. There'll be other people out there that will do chesed. Okay, so if I'm not doing the chesed, somebody else will do the chesed. And he's going to be lacking that goodness. But the one who needs the chesed will get it somewhere along the line. This is not true when it comes to the chesed that specifically has to be done between a husband and a wife. A woman is totally reliant on her husband. What he does for her, nobody else can do. Nobody. And that's why the Torah said there's a chiyuv on the husband. A husband cannot take away from his wife these 3 things. Machlekes Rashi and the Ramban, what it's referring to. But l'chayr, the pashtus Rashi goes with based on the Gemara, is talking about food and clothing and her special time. So maybe somebody else can provide for her the food. Maybe somebody else can provide for her the clothing. But the special time, there's nobody else that can provide that. That's something that's unique to a husband, and that nobody else can do that. So yes, if a person doesn't have a wife, he doesn't necessarily have to do chesed for anybody. But if a person has a wife, he has an absolute obligation maybe that fits into what we said before about how the Rambam brings the same halachos, or very close to the same wording in Hilchos Deis about V'ahavta Re'echa Kamocha, and in Hilchos Ishus with regards to a wife, that Lamaise, in general, a person should be Mekayim V'ahavta Re'echa Kamocha with everybody, with every Jew. And even though we just said that the lowest level is just be, just don't try not to hurt anybody else. But obviously there are higher levels than that of doing more good for somebody else, and even higher levels than that even. But Lamaise, when it comes to a wife, there are certain things that only a husband can do. There is nobody else. So even if this person is not doing for anybody else, he still has an obligation to do for his wife. Now, I want to make an important point over here. This is something that's very easily can be misunderstood. Okay? It's a point that I saw. It brought in a sefer, Binyan Abayis, a beautiful sefer. Anybody's interested, it's really a fantastic sefer. And I want to make this point over here because it's very easy to make a mistake. It seems from this line that the most important thing between a husband and wife is chesed. That's what it seems like. That's what it sounds like. But the truth of the matter is that it has to be tweaked just a little bit. Do you know why? The reason is because nobody wants to be a chesed case, right? Nobody wants to. In halacha, we know in hilchos tzedakah that if you're going to give somebody tzedakah, the much better way of doing it is doing it b'seis, or doing it in a hidden way. That the person who's receiving it doesn't know the one who's giving, and the one who's giving doesn't know the one who's receiving, because the person who needs to take the tzedakah is embarrassed. He doesn't want to be the chesed case. One guy actually told me a story. A guy told me a story that at one point in his life, he was receiving matanos levyonim. He was receiving, we shouldn't know from such things. Obviously, there has to be somebody to receive matanos levyonim, otherwise we wouldn't be able to be mekayim the mitzvah. But this person told me he was receiving matanos levyonim. And when he got the matanos levyonim from whatever the Gabbai tzedakah was, whoever he was, so when he gave it to him, he said, a chefze shel mitzvah. Right? The guy, it felt like 2 cents, not even. You're like, what am I, your lulav? That's what I am? All I am is just like, your thing that you could do a mitzvah with? That's how you look at me? He felt terrible, terrible. He actually told me a similar story, another 2 stories like this. Nobody wants to be, you're a chesed case, so I have to do chesed for you. Right? You need help, so I'm here to help you. Right? Nobody wants to be like that. So if a person treats his wife like that, she's not going to be interested in it either. She doesn't want to feel like that. So when he says over here, that's the whole point. The whole home is based on chesed, so that's what you have to do. That's not what he means. That's not what he means. What he means is that the purpose of the giving has to come to the kirva, like you said before. The person has to give in a way that brings closeness, not in it feels in a way that a person is embarrassed to take it. How do you know the difference? So there's another Maimar Chazal, I forgot where it is, that if you give a child a treat, a candy or something like that, you should make sure to tell their parents about it. Why? I'm doing chesed for him. He doesn't have any candy and I gave him candy. I'm doing chesed. So no, it's not, I'm giving a gift. The difference between doing chesed and giving a gift is a chesed is something I need, and I'm lacking something, and you need to fulfill it for me because I'm lacking, and you're the one who's going to save me. You're my hero. A gift is something that you give just to create a kesher, to create a closeness to each other. I'm giving you, so therefore, it's the exact opposite. When you're doing chesed for somebody, it should be hidden. It should be in a way that people don't know. Certainly not the one who receives it shouldn't know that, for the one who's giving it. They shouldn't know about it. But when you're giving a gift, you should know. Because if you know who it is, it brings a closer kesher. So when we're talking about giving over here, giving to a spouse, the giving to the spouse is supposed to bring closeness, which means it's not coming because you're lacking and I have to do this chesed for you. But it's coming from this perspective of wanting to create that closeness. So every time we say this over here, we might repeat it a few times because he does bring this point up again and again. The point is that the chesed itself is not a chesed of like tzedakah, where you need something and I'm going to help you with the thing that you need. but rather it's a type of giving that shows that I want to be closer to you and bring that closeness. Okay, shkoyach, I'll stop over here.
Thank you for joining Real Judaism, where we explore Torah's wisdom for real life. Created by J Foundations and produced by Eli Podcast Productions. Find more episodes at realjudaism.org and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.